Okay, so first of all, why does this woman talk about content confidence? What is this all about? So I wanted to start with a story because it genuinely did start with me having horrible feelings of guilt. I had run a membership. It was lovely called back in the day, just simply the Content Club, and I would run planning sessions. And during those planning sessions, lovely people would turn up, and some of them, well, I say that some wouldn't turn up, first of all, which always sort of surprised me, and then other people would turn up and they would put together a great plan and it all looked fab. And then obviously, because they're part of my membership, I'm a supporter of their businesses, I would follow them. And this content that they planned, that perhaps I'd even talked to them about directly, literally, a single post that they were going to do that day, a blog they were going to write, a video they were going to record, that I'd seen them write down, put into their content planner, which I also had provided them with, didn't come to fruition. And I did what I guess probably a lot of us do. I was like, what am I doing wrong? Like, I must be confusing people. I must be, I don't know, just not motivating them in the right way. I must be making this too difficult. I just couldn't work it out because I had, a majority that were doing their plans, putting stuff on paper, and it was coming to fruition. And so I did something which was horrible, really. I actually asked people. I asked why they didn't come to planning. I asked people who were struggling with their plans to implement their plans, what was going on. And, just like we've gone through with the challenge this week, people talk to me about time issues and struggling with ideas and things like that. But the more and more I talked to them, that wasn't the actual knob of the issue. It was a confidence thing. It was a confidence in their ability to create content, in their ability to come up with good ideas that would, do the right things, that would help them reach their goals, that would attract their ideal clients. It was just something that, and I'll show you today that we'll look at it from 3 different angles that kept coming up. And it was just, in some ways, as I say here, it was a lovely realization because there was a bit of it. It was like, oh, it's not me. Phew, it wasn't. And they said that to me, they're like, no, we get it. We get it, Kate. Like, we get what you're trying to achieve. We get the planning. We get we get the idea. Of course, write a plan, create the content. Simple. But what I hadn't realized was they were facing their own sort of inner barriers and inner things that were stopping them from just implementing the plan. So that's why I started looking into this area of content confidence. For those of you that don't know me all that well, my name is Kate Llewellyn. I have been running the content consultancy for nearly 10 years, following a earlier career in academic publishing. I was a commissioning editor for textbooks, and also I did a little bit of work for Oxford University Press within their dictionaries department, and actually on the Oxford English Dictionary. So if you ever see me sharing quirky words and, wanting to talk all things language, grammar and books, then you know why. In my years of running the content consultancy, I was primarily a professional content writer. I specialised in blogs and websites, SEO, all that good stuff. And what I realised was, alongside this work with content confidence, in the early days, setting up the Content Club, was that I wanted to help people to do it themselves, and particularly small business owners, solopreneurs who are doing all of it and actually are really, really passionate about their businesses. And I wanted them to be able to share that in a really natural and really powerful way, by helping them to do their own marketing, particularly when they were at a stage where outsourcing, paying someone else to do it just wasn't feasible. So that's my background. That's where I come in. And as I say, so I now absolutely focus primarily on helping people to create their content. And it started, so very sort of matter-of-factly, with plans and giving people templates and ideas. And now, as I say, I've taken it down to that next layer of looking at content confidence. So today you're all here to learn about the power of content confidence. So first of all, I said I had a lexicography background. We better define a little bit what I mean by content confidence. So for me, it's all about a shift in attitude to your content creation. And I use the term content. Someone actually questioned this the other day. They're like, what do you mean by content? And I was like, it's funny, isn't it? You sort of use this word so often that to me it seems really clear, but it's a good thing to just to clarify. So to me, I love writing, and words are my thing from that point of view. But I wanted to help people create content that's around so much more than just copy, which obviously is the words. So yes, it might be that you do a lot of social media captions, so you're writing them. It might be that you do quite like writing a blog or writing writing emails and doing email marketing. But for me, it's about all areas of content. So for people who really don't like writing, I want to help you to be just as confident in recording videos, in doing a podcast, in even, making sure that you're really in love with your graphics and your imagery and photographs and things like that. It's about that whole package of content. And my absolute mission is to just simply make content creation easier, feel easier, because I don't think it's an easy job. Marketing isn't easy. It's, it's the same as doing your bookkeeping. It's the same as perhaps, dealing with employees, if that's something you have to do. It's hard and it's part of our jobs, but we have to do it. But if I can make the content creation side of things feel a bit easier, then that's what it's all about for me. And the easier it feels to you, the more you see the positive outcomes, the more hopefully confident you feel. It's also, for me, I work with a lot of women, and I'm sorry that, to stereotype in this way, but it is a lot about empowering individuals to share their views, to shout about their businesses, to, show up boldly and have a voice in a world where it feels like there is constant noise, where it does feel like we're shouting into the void. And it's all about me getting you to share these fantastic ideas that, I think I said in the live yesterday that people sort of have these amazing ideas and then they slowly step away because it's a little bit scary. And who loses out? The world, right? So I want to see your voices online. I want to, read those blogs, read those social media posts. I want to see great ideas being shared, and with the view, I'm a businesswoman, so I want to see that you're connecting with your ideal audience, you're showing off everything that's amazing about you and your business and making those sales. What is content confidence not? And this is one that I never had this little section when I first started talking about content confidence, but I've realized I really need to, address this, because what it gets misconstrued as, well, if you're confident, just show up, say what you like online, stick a social media post out, yeah, whatever, I'm here, who cares, that's not content confidence. To me, that's arrogance. That's bragging. It's, it's purposefully inviting controversy, perhaps just to get the comments, just to get the algorithm to take notice. A lot of people say to me like, oh God, I don't want to be on like social media and oversharing about everything I've done in my personal life and what my kids are up to and, what's going on at home or whatever, oh, is that what you mean? The old thing of like, be authentically you. And it's like, oh yeah, you just got to share everything that you've ever done. And obviously effectively making you feel very, very uncomfortable. That's the complete opposite to me of content confidence. And talking of power of content confidence, that is how to, reduce your power in seconds. And finally, as with the other thing I do want to sort of say, because I've used the term sort of content confidence coach and things like that, I also want to say that this isn't about confidence generally. If you genuinely have a confidence issue much more broadly than just within your marketing, that's not what I'm about. That's not what my expertise is in. You heard what it's in. It's in words and writing and publishing and marketing and online digital presence. That's what I'm about. And so it is different to me. It's very much about you being completely confident in your content, in what you're saying, in what you're producing, in how you're going about your marketing for your business. And that's just an important thing for me. To kick off, I did say there wasn't too much to do, but if you can give me a mark out of 10 in the chat. As I say, it's just in the bottom right, there's a little speech bubble. How do you feel out of 10 that your content confidence is right now? For those that you have done the challenge, I'd be interested to know whether you've said I was a 2 and now I'm a 4, or I was a 2 and now I'm an 8, or wherever you were. If you're happy to share that, do. But yeah, give me a sense, give yourself a sense of where you are right now. 6, love it. Oh, amazing, Catherine, love it. Ali, a 4. Caroline, yes, yes, we've talked about that. Actually, I've got a really lovely section on skills in a minute. Brilliant, thank you. This is really, really helpful because there's another slide that kind of talks about this a bit more, but yeah, we don't often stop and think about it, do we? And to me, if you're a brilliant business owner, if you have got clients or you've got what you would call a business, and why aren't you a 10? Like, you must be doing something right, or you've done something right in the past. So again, not for sharing now, with strangers amongst us, but genuinely just have a little think about where's that gap? Why aren't you a 10? If you ask me, how confident are you in your content? I'm maybe 9 sometimes, but generally I'm a 10. So what is stopping you getting there? And actually, some of the stuff we're going to talk about might help you with that too. So what happens when you don't have content confidence? And this is, I think, the real nub of it as well, and hopefully a bit of a driver for you guys today, is, what happens when you don't have content confidence? All the stuff we talk about with the power, it reverse. So first of all, you constantly, are going to have limiting beliefs. You're going to think, I'm no good at this. You're going to not even want to do it. Like I gave you that example of those people at the beginning. They were putting these plans together, but they just weren't making the time to implement them. They didn't want to do it. There was that gut feeling of just like, what's the point? What if this or that happens? Just lots and lots of things that stop you, just constantly get in your way to what should be genuinely just another task, just another little business task that we have to do. We've got to do a bit of advertising, do a bit of promotion. Brilliant, right, carry on with our day. That's what it should be. And if it's not that for you, this is what happens when you don't have content confidence. Equally, I genuinely believe that your content suffers, and I mentioned that the final task today in the reset was to create content, in this feeling of positive energy, in this feeling of self-belief, in this feeling of just, I've got something to share and it's going to be amazing. If you don't, your content suffers. And I genuinely, and I'm sure you guys too, you can sense it. Like, if you've ever watched a video of someone and they're like having to record it and they don't really want to be there and it's horrible. And don't get me wrong, I know being on camera is a whole other confidence issue. But if they're literally creating that content because they feel like they have to, someone said they have to create a video, and they're doing it so stressed and so worried, it's really hard to, connect. Also, you will put out bland, diluted content because you want to play safe. You want to just make it, basically make it go away. Just say like, okay, I've done the job. It's gone. And finally, I do believe in the power of attraction, the law of attraction. I've talked this week in one of my lives about that classic thing of, you walk into a shop and you've got I can say young lad, such a stereotype, but a young lad, you're in a phone shop, mobile phone shop, and they're like, oh, hi, lovely to meet you. Yes, what are you looking for today? Would you like the iPhone blah or the Google Pixel X or whatever, all right, yeah. And when they ask questions, it's like, yes, let me know. Not actually know that much, and that is the truth, but the way they come across, you trust this person, you think, yeah, they know what to say, in comparison with somebody who is sort of like, yeah, well, you can have what you want, really. I mean, there is this phone, there is that phone. Yeah, well, I don't know, actually, there might be another phone as well. I mean, I can offer you another phone. Which phone? No, I don't really mind. What do you want? Well, that sort of feeling, the really mixed messaging, the really confused element, the basically lack of enthusiasm, the lack of attracting, and this is what your audience sees and hears. And I will pick it up and I'll mention it a couple of times, but I think this is also a little bit of a problem with AI content. I'm not saying don't use it. If you've really got that blank page syndrome, if you're really struggling or you're worried about your writing and you want it to be checked or proofread or what have you through AI, definitely. But even if you get something to be completely AI generated, I want you to read it through with a smile. I want you to read it through with a passion. I want you to feel so excited that this is content that you may have never been able to write yourself, but thanks to AI, it has been written in a way that just lights you up and you feel fantastic, and and then it gets published. That at least is a step forward in content confidence, rather than a copy and paste job. You don't really know, oh well, AI did it for me, let's see what happens. There's a real difference. And it's, you know, it's why for me, it's really important to address, because I don't want you to waste any more time. I don't want you to spend hours creating content that doesn't land, that doesn't attract, that doesn't light you up. There's no point. I'd rather you did nothing than that in some ways. Okay. So you might be saying, Kate, this is all great, but how do I actually become a confident content creator? Well, to me, there are these 5 stages, and I will say to you that they will ebb and flow. I mentioned that I'm a kind of, you know, I'm a 10 most of the time, but I am sometimes a 9. And basically, I think it's really useful, this kind of pathway, because have a think about where you are and where you're ebbing and flowing between them. So first of all, I believe that to, you know, build your confidence, it definitely starts with consciousness. And, you know, there's probably no surprise that that's exactly what this is about today. And it's about what, you know, my reset is about. It's about bringing it to the fore. Why don't I just create amazing content and, you know, and happily walk off and do my day job? Why is there this sort of mind monkeys going on? So first of all, raise that consciousness. We've done our marks out of 10. Fabulous first step, you know, great way of doing it. The next thing is that we do need some clarity, which again, we have sort of slightly started about why. Why are we creating this content? And we talked a little bit about having very clear purposes for our different bits of content. But also to me, if you're a business owner, it's about thinking about the end goal. How many sales do you want to make? The worst thing anyone can ever say to me is like, oh, I'd like 10,000 followers. I'm like, why? Like, what is that going to do for you? What are you going to do with those? If they come back to me with conversion rates and this is how they're going to follow up with those 10,000 and they actually have a product that they could sell to 10,000 people, I am in. But that, you know, it's never about the number of likes, the visibility in terms of reach or numbers for me. It's always about what is your actual sales goal? And then we can work backwards as to, you know, who we're going to sell them to, how we're going to get you there. So getting that clarity, because all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I definitely know why I want to send that email, do that post on that day, you know, send that email to that person, update my website in that way. You need that real clarity about why you're creating that content, and that content not as individual posts, but as a sum of its parts. Like, where is this going? What are we doing? On that, consistency, I think, pretty much naturally comes. You know, when you've got this goal, you know why you're doing it, you're going to put together a plan, you're going to implement it because you're really, really motivated to do so. And you can start, the best bit is you start to test and measure. It starts to boost your confidence because you can start to see what's working. And yes, I'm not, unfortunately, a magician that can, you know, definitely make it work. What's not working? And you can look at that, like, what am I doing consistently, you know, in line with my goals, in line with what I want to achieve with my content, what's working, what's not. Brilliant. A lot of people never get to the consistency stage. And I'm being honest about that. They don't. They start and then they give up. They change direction. They switch. It's all too hard. And that's what knocks your confidence, because you're like, well, it never works, Kate. But it's because you don't stick at it, or you don't have a plan, or you don't have a clear clarity behind when you even started, why you were doing it and what you were trying to achieve. Once we get consistency, I think this is where you get to sort of slightly Kate level, let's call it, of excitement, because you get conviction. You get absolute, like, yeah, nothing's going to get in my way of creating this content and doing this marketing, because, you know, I'm seeing that it's starting to work. I feel great about it. It feels good when I do it. You're getting all those things that we want, the engagement, the inquiries, the leads, the growing visibility, which comes as well. We love it. And that's when we end up with confidence. But it is a pathway, and we do ebb and flow. And, you know, as I've written here, we do this with lots of compassion along the way, because it's not always, you know, it's not an A equals B. As if it does, I'd be a multi-millionaire. You know, there's a lot of, you know, variables. There are a lot of things happen in our personal lives, let alone our professional lives. We do need to test and measure. We do need to plan and to implement, and then still go back and evaluate. We do need to do all that. And secondly, and I think this is the joy of whichever business you're in, content creation is a creative, by definition, by its name, activity. So have some fun with that. Like, you get to do something very, very creative. I actually got told off the other day because I said, oh, I'm not really very creative. And they said, you can't say that, you create content. And I was like, actually, I think what I've misinterpreted is I'm not very artistic, which is very, very true. But, you know, you do get to be creative. You do get to try different things. And I think, you know, for all the negativity around like social media and the world that we live in, it does give us an opportunity to try lots of things, to try lots of different forms of content, that, you know, which is free as such at the point of use, that, you know, we never had years ago. I mean, I know I do sometimes lament, wouldn't it lovely to go back to running a business where all you needed to do was put an advert in the yellow papers and maybe a poster on the village notice board. But sadly, we don't live in those days anymore. Okay, let me know in the chat if that sort of resonates, or any questions that come up for that. I can obviously take you through. So we want to harness this power of content confidence. So how do we do it? And I say this is sort of a nice summary of the reset that we've been doing this week. So I believe there are 3 areas that you can check in on at any time. And this is a really great, like, grab it, pop it down on a piece of paper. But if for some reason you're feeling like your marketing is off, you're feeling like that alignment within you isn't quite there, and definitely your confidence in your content, it has taken a bit of a dent, these are 3 areas that you can just do a little check-in with and identify something that you can positively do, which I think is what sometimes feels so horrible in business, doesn't it? You're like, there's nothing I can do about it. Like, well, here we are today, we're going to take back control. So first of all, it is the classic limiting beliefs. What are you telling yourself? And I say, you know, I've said this all week, but go deeper. How much, you know, how much are you doubting yourself? What's the evidence behind it? You know, what is your mindset and beliefs doing to affect your content? And you can just do a very quick sort of 5-minute, write it down, try and consider, you know, what is feeding into this belief that you are no good and all the rest of it. Because I meet so many people that tell me they are rubbish at content and blah, blah, blah. And then when we get talking about their business, it turns out that perhaps maybe they're not that great at social media because they find it really uncomfortable, but they've got loads of other bits of content that are working really well. They've got loads of happy clients, business is looking good. So, you know, have a think about where you are on the limiting beliefs scale. I love the phrase, how much self-doubt tax are you willing to pay on your content? And, you know, how much doubt you have around your abilities around that. Have a think, and then, because it's me, we always go from the emotional to the practical. So we're going to turn these I've got nothing to say, I'm no good, and all that into actually the belief that you do have a voice to be heard. So we're going to capture that negative thought, and as we've done for those in the reset, and you're very welcome to do again today, is we're going to capture and reframe. And what I invite people to do is to harness their power, is to write a sentence that really helps you, especially if you have that one really strong, you know, negative thought that jumps in every time you sit down to write a post, every time you come to, you know, write some content or record a video. Turn it around, just capture that thought, go nope, and overwrite it with a sentence like, I choose to believe, or I can and I want to, whichever fits right for you. The other one as well that a lot of people come up with me is it's not necessarily a belief about themselves, but there is a limiting belief about what others might say or do. So one of the things I wanted for you to take away today was to write your quick win. And number 1 is write one what if solution. So if someone writes a negative comment, I will do this. Why? I will ignore it. I will delete it. I will send them a private message and, you know, ask what's going on. It's got to be right for you. It's got to be right for your business. It's got to be right for your circumstance. But just let's, you know, if you came to me and said, okay, but what if, fill in the blank. And I was one of those classic sort of managers. I'd say to you, right, give me a solution. Go on, what is your solution? Like, rational. We're just here in a really safe space, having a lovely presentation on a lunchtime on a Friday. Just let's take back control. So that's my quick win 1. I'm going to keep moving, but feel free to write that down. The next area, as I said, so we've addressed our limiting beliefs, very much ourself. And next, also very much our mindset and our inner selves, I suppose is that the right word. The next area is knowledge gaps. And I genuinely, in some ways, this is the biggest one for me. Please don't ever worry that you don't know how to do marketing. I mean, maybe you can give me a shout in the comments. But how many of you have had formal marketing training? How many of you have, held marketing positions? It's this weird phenomenon, isn't it, where you become a business owner and it's like, oh yeah, you should just know how to do your marketing, you should know how to do your books, you should know how to, run a business, you should know all these things. And what's even better about marketing, it never stays the same. So it doesn't matter what social media platform you're on, they're all a bit different, and then they like to change every so often. One minute you're told, it's all about email, then you read something else and it's all about SEO, and now it's all about AI search. I get it. If you are just a mess in the corner being like, I can't do this, Kate, I can't keep up. So that's okay. Let's take a moment and go, yeah, flipping heck, it's hard doing marketing in this day and age. And what I want you to do with the knowledge gaps element is the check-in of going, what are the gaps? And what is there any fear of unknown for me? Definitely. And sort of, first of all, again, I said a lot of compassion about that and the fact that, that is the case. And the fact that actually, even if you look for help, if you AI some support of what are the best marketing, or you go on a Google search rabbit hole, it's horrible. So many things that come up. So, identify what those gaps are, first of all, and especially the sentiment of, I just wish I knew. What is that thing that every time I just wish I knew? It's really powerful to think in that way, because it's sort of, what I like is it shifts the blame, because, and rightly so, it's not always you and your limiting beliefs. That it's actually, sometimes we really just don't know. And to help you move from being whatever brilliant profession and sector and business owner you are to a confident creator as well. Yes, you need that string to your bow as well. We can do a few things. So first of all, genuinely, again, part of the reset was looking through all of the different marketing activities we do. Are you trying to do too much? Because staying on top of all the different platforms, all of the different areas, can be really, really tough. Can you simplify without negatively impacting, obviously, the sales of your business? Can you simplify the amount of platforms you're on and potentially the amount of content that you need to create? Also, go back to your passion, your love, your creativity. What types of content do you like most? And therefore, which platforms best suit the publications of that content? Or even which features, of a social media platform or a website or email, whatever it might be, could help. If you're a bit like me and you quite like chatting away to camera, and brilliant, pick a platform that loves video, that's going to push video, that, is going to run more masterclasses, webinars, rather than slogging away on a blog, for example, because the thought of writing 500 words just to, appear in an AI search was something you were told to do. So, do note down what you do know, because that's another thing. We're great at identifying that we're rubbish and we don't know anything, but it's okay to identify areas where you're like, do you know what, I do have a bit of a gap. And every time I come to do, I have a lot with sort of people who go, I love being on Instagram, but I've got no idea how to do reels. We have a big chat about where reels fits in the customer journey, why it could be great content for their business. And if we totally agree that it fits, then it's the first bit of advice from me is go and do a reels course. Go and find that absolute top amazing Instagram expert within your network and say, can I do a one-to-one session? And this is your quick win number 2. So yes, I want you to feel confident. I want you to harness all the things that you already have. But if there is one area that you would love to learn more about, then make a note of that right now. So from all those knowledge gaps you may have noted or that have popped up, just think about one area that you could invest in that would just definitely make your sort of regular content creation a little bit easier. Now, you'll see in inverted commas, I've put there schooling in. What do you want schooling in? And this is because I went to a wonderful session on Wednesday night about basically the difference between schooling and learning, and this idea of, obviously, we can attend trainings, we can be taught how to do something, but the actual learning often happens afterwards. It happens on the job. And so this is really just another note to say, you know, sometimes, again, the learning of the gap we're trying to fill can take a little bit of time. You know, we might do the training in the reels, you know, creating reels, but it still might take us some time to, you know, get to be a confident reel creator. We might have some rubbish ones to start with, you know, it's going to take time. So it's just a reminder that, you know, paying out for a training course doesn't necessarily always completely close this knowledge gap, but it can help to give you the confidence to give it a try, to do a bit more learning and to become, you know, more proficient in that area. Let me just double check, because I think I've missed something. Lara, huge knowledge gap in. I'm going to come back to that comment about the audience there. Yeah, Caroline, yeah, really interesting point there. Caroline just said about the difference between promotion and marketing. Absolutely. You know, when are we just promoting, talking about what we do, etc., and actually having that strategy behind you? Ali just saying, yeah, being your own brand. Yes, that is, you know, that is huge, isn't it? When you are your business is a lot different to perhaps marketing on behalf of a business, a faceless business. And all I will say with that is, as a one-man band, I wouldn't say just do this because it's an easy way out. But if you genuinely think about what you offer, your audience, etc., there can be ways to market as a business and not yourself. This is what I mean about the difference between content confidence and just having confidence generally. If you genuinely, the thought of you being, you know, Kate Llewellyn, the content consultant, is horrible, and actually just being the content consultancy, there are still loads of ways to do that. You will be able to think of millions of businesses that you know the name of the business, you know what they do, you buy from them maybe. You don't necessarily know who the CEO is. You don't even know, you know, what the size of team is. It could be one person, it could be 10 people, it could be 50,000 people. So there are ways of doing that, and that's still very, very legitimate. This is the thing as well with me. I am never going to be like, yep, you've got to be front and center doing TikTok dances and, you know, and putting yourself out there. No way. We do marketing your way because that is how I get the best content out of you. Okay. The final point is about business niggles. Now, this is one because what I don't want you to do is be like, this is it. Okay, my business is rubbish. I'm leaving. I'm throwing it all out, you know, and starting again. I really hope you're not at that stage. And this is why they're niggles. This is not be all and end all stuff. This is identifying where that wrinkle, that niggle is turning up. Because again, so many people, especially when you run a business on your own, they go, have a business and it's over here, and my offers, my packages, my services here. And then they go, here I am doing some marketing. It's brilliant. I'm putting social media posts out. It's fabulous. It's lovely. And then over here, I'm looking at my money. I'm looking at my sales, what's coming in, what's not. And they are like three different planets. There's no discussion between what you're offering versus what's being sold. The most, for example, there might be that you're, you know, marketing over here and you're doing all this visibility stuff, but it's not actually turning into sales. But we're not even thinking about that. We're just carrying on doing our marketing the way we've always done it. We're doing our, you know, post every day because that's what someone told us once to do. And for me, it's always about bringing it all back together. I mean, in any business, you need all of these bits to work together. And I know definitely I worked in a world, you know, where it was like there was a marketing department, there was a sales department. So it felt from the outside looking in very, very, you know, in silos. There was a board of directors, you know, that made the big decisions. So it didn't feel cohesive. But actually, a good business is cohesive. You know, at the top level, there are people from sales, marketing, operations, etc., all talking to each other to make sure that it filters down. And if you have you are a solopreneur or a small business owner, you need to do all of that. And you do need to act as your marketing director sometimes and step back and be like, well, first of all, what are the areas that I want to sell? Why are them? And can I sell them expertly because I love them? And I often say I've got a lovely example of people who, like they come on a call and they say they're no good at, marketing or what have you. And I ask them about their business. It's always my first thing. I'm like, what are the packages that you offer? What are the services, price points? Obviously ask them about sort of ideal clients, that kind of thing. And they light up. They light up in front of me and they start talking about these packages and they start talking about all the services they offer and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, where is this in your content? I don't see it. And it's often because they actually find it really, really hard to define. They find it hard to market their individual services or the package or whatever. And sometimes we need to do a bit of reshaping of the package, the offer, whatever, for marketing purposes. And this is like really important to think about, because sometimes we need to market something to get the sort of inquiry to then. A lot of people, again, when you work as a solopreneur, they're like, oh, I don't mind, I can tailor my services. I do this bespoke, I do that. But imagine the scenario of going into a restaurant and they say, look, these are all the ingredients we've got. Just let us know. Let us know what you'd like us to cook today. I'd be like, I've got no idea. I need 3 choices or 5 choices. And then to pick one. And it must be that I pick one and then the chef comes out and says, well, actually, instead of asparagus, we've got a broccoli. Would you prefer? Oh, actually, yeah, I would. I don't know. But do you see what I mean? Sometimes from a marketing perspective, we need to be very, very clear and precise about what we've got to sell. From a sales perspective, we might be able to be a bit more flexible and different. But if there is a service or an element of your business in any form that you don't feel 100% confident in, that you don't clearly know how to explain, if you are working on behalf of somebody and marketing the services, again, I've been in that position, and you don't 100% know how, what are the benefits? What are the transformations? Even I've had definitely a warning. People don't know their prices. They go, yeah, I could do it for this, but I could. No, we can't market like that. We need absolute clarity. And I always come back to the big brands when it comes to business, big niggles. As soon as a big brand is struggling, it's often because they're just not sure where they're going and things are going wrong. The ones that, you know exactly what you're going to get. I say the word Big Mac, you know what that is. I say that, once upon a time, it used to be sort of like a Marks and Spencer's t-shirt, exactly sort of the quality, the style, etc. It's about really, really understanding your business. And one of the things I would say to move you forward is, first of all, like, have a think about if there's anything in your business that doesn't light you up. To be bold about it, we need to totally realign. And you've got basically a couple of options, which is that, first of all, look at everything that you offer and realign with it all and go, I do really love that I offer that. And I do really love that I offer this. And if you don't have a physical like menu and price list, then, that's another top tip, is to create one. And then it is to have a little think about whether there is stuff that you don't want to offer anymore. Is that what is getting in the way of your marketing? Because you're actually trying to promote, trying to advertise stuff that doesn't really align anymore and that doesn't light you up and that doesn't get you excited. Flip side, start creating content for the stuff that you do love. If your confidence has taken a real knock, and especially if you're doing this as a bit of I'm just going to go through and run through, if you've been promoting something and trying to sell something, maybe done special offers or whatever it might be, and it's not been converting, then maybe look at something else that is maybe some quick wins, some quick sales, if there is such a thing. But, it's, what's the saying, like flogging a dead horse, it can be really demoralizing. And it's not to say that you stop, stop that service completely or anything, but to boost your confidence back up, to remind you that you can market and sell items, it can be really helpful just to switch back to those services or packages or offers that you are really, really aligned with. Another little trick is, as I've said, if you're struggling, you've got a service or package that you love, but you feel like you're struggling to get it across in your content, I often say to people to just come on a Zoom call, come on a Google Meet and record yourself talking about it. Because when I used to do a lot of website copywriting, the more people talked about a certain service, the more they would come out. And so often these absolute nuggets would come out. And it's not to use that video anywhere else, but it's just to keep you talking, to be like, yeah, and this is why I do it. And this is what I wanted to achieve. And this is what I have achieved. And oh yeah, I had this client that did this. And these things will come out, and it can really help you to sort of clarify that content that you need to share to talk about certain services or elements for your business. If this resonates and it feels like, yeah, she's nailed it, that's what it is. It's this thing where actually the thing I'm selling, I'm not 100% behind, or I'm not 100% sure who it's for. Like, there can be lots of little elements as to why that alignment is off. Then what I would suggest as a quick win is pick the one thing that you are really passionate about and try selling it for a whole month. If business allows, obviously there's lots of sort of caveats there, but genuinely, I call it dog with a bone energy. Like, you are going to sell, and it could be generally sort of get you back on the horse. It could be something really simple. So, if you had a £5 download, or a power hour is a really good example, that kind of classic £99 offer, whatever and just go for it. Like, try different types of content, market it, look at your customer journey, look at your leads, look at all the elements, and just be like, I am just going to sell this one thing using my best energy, my best content. Again, it can just really help boost your confidence and prove to yourself that your content can sell things. So just have a little think about that and see what you think. Okay. I'm conscious of time, so I'm just going to keep moving on, and then I will take any more questions. So first of all, I want you to, commit to at least one quick win. If you can do, all three, then fabulous. But just one quick win and see like the difference it makes to your content confidence. Okay. So to summarize, when you nail these three areas, this is where the power of content confidence lies. Okay, this is where you get it all, so to speak. So with content confidence, you obviously, first stop, you've got self-belief. You're not the guy in the shop anymore that's going, yeah, if you want to buy from me, you can. I don't really care. Or do care a lot, but I don't have the energy or the confidence to get that across. You're back, you're in the game. You're like, yes, I know I'm brilliant, and I know I've got stuff to sell. And you remember all of the wonderful things and differences you've made to people and how you've helped them in the past. It's motivational. It fuels your ambition, right? It gives you another layer of armor, I think, when you're like, no, I believe in myself, regardless of the actual sales coming in or whatever. You're like, no, I do believe, and it keeps you going. And I think especially at the moment with everything that's going on, it's really, really powerful to address. The next thing with the knowledge gap, with maybe just filling a knowledge gap, closing that knowledge gap, you do get to master the skills. You get to be like, yeah, I can do this. I talked about schooling versus learning. You get to a place where implementation becomes easier, because you're like, oh, that barrier every time where I said I was going to create a reel and I didn't really know how, it's certainly lessening, or it's gone. And you're just getting out of the way. We all do it, don't we? We do the same thing again and again and think, yeah, I really could definitely do this in an easier way. Make it easier. Find a way to make it easier. And I think I talked earlier about, not a lot of us have been trained in marketing. This sort of stuff does start to think, well, actually, yes, I do know. I have a few gaps, but actually I do know how to do this, and I do know how to do that, and I do know how to schedule, and I do know how to add a blog to my website, or I do, you feel like a bit more a master in the area of marketing. And then you do get to feel business bold, because you have a renewed conviction in promoting your business. Once again, you're like, yeah, I'm totally worthy of the success, and success as defined by you, no one else. You know what you are what you want to sell, why you want to sell it. It's all those things. And it's definitely, you know, the power of this sort of combined content confidence across these three areas. And there's a little bonus as well, because there's even more power in the way that your audience and ideal clients then react to. And I've seen this. I've seen the turnaround in this. You've got self-belief. When you've got self-belief in yourself, it's quite hard not to believe in you. So your ideal clients are way more going to believe in you. It filters down into all areas of the customer journey. You know, you're turning up on a discovery call. You're like, yeah, I've got something great to sell. I know exactly how to explain it. That's what your content is, right? I know what I'm saying. In terms of the knowledge, you're using stuff, you know, you're going to be clear. Sorry, let me do the know, like, and trust. People are going to go know, like, and trust you more because your content is going to have that sort of elevated level. As I say, it's got this energy and confidence behind it. You're going to be possibly showing up more regularly. Regularly and consistency is a whole nother discussion in terms of how much. But, you know, if you're not doing anything right now, then no one's going to get to know, like, and trust you. If you are creating content regularly and consistently and in a way that, you know, is on message, is correctly positioned, all of those things, then you are giving your audience a much quicker chance to know, like, and trust. And again, that business boldness, it means that you're really clear about what you offer and why. You're not going to leave your audience or your ideal client confused and, you know, not really understanding what you offer or why. You're not going to leave them with that little, you know, niggle of doubt because you're a bit vague about the pricing and you're a bit vague about what you actually offer and you're a bit vague, and, you know, you're going to just have so much clarity, so much conviction, and that's going to come across in your content. It's going to, you know, we've been there, we've been on the other side of it as a buyer. We've seen it when you just don't quite feel that this person knows exactly what they want to sell and why, etc. Flip it on its head, and again, the power of content confidence, you know, will really, really repay you. So that's the power of content confidence. I have one more ask of you. Now, please don't switch off. I have been on enough masterclasses to know that this is the bit where I go, oh, here they go, they're going to sell. I am going to sell you something, but it's because I am absolutely passionate about it. I have seen the power of what it does. If I have one, well, let me put it this way. I've got one more question for you today. So, if I asked you right now to write a 90-day plan for your content, how does that make you feel? If you're like, yeah, okay, that sounds really good. All I need is a bit of accountability, a bit of thing. This is not for you. If the thought of putting a 90-day plan, all of those, you know, self-doubt and all that comes up of going, I just don't know where to start. I don't know who I need to talk to. Yeah, I don't know, you know, what platforms I should be on. I don't know what features, all of those things, then content clarity is for you. This is why it was designed. In short, it is a 6-week group program. I give you a template to complete a content strategy document, and we work through for 6 weeks. We look at yourself and where you're at with your content creation abilities. We look at your business and we, you know, identify ideal clients, markets, and go through, make sure you are really clear about the services, product offering, etc. that you have. We then use week 3 to 6, we go through all of the different platforms that you might use. And this I am really proud of, is because I don't think, you know, in marketing, we get to learn about social media or we get to learn about email marketing. But the idea of this is that we actually identify what content you want to create and where it's going to sit in a full customer journey, from visibility, engagement, nurturing, and through to selling. So we cover it all: social media, emails, messaging, websites, and we even have a week where it's like cover all, anything else, networking, podcasting, going to events, going to expos, all the different areas where you might need content, and, you know, we'll be doing your marketing. And we finish with a planning session, which hopefully you, by then, I say hopefully, you will by then be in a position where you're like, yes, Kate, I can create a 90-day plan, and hopefully you also have the confidence to implement it. It is currently $597. That is my challenge offer week for you. There are 2 payment plans. 597 as one payment, or 3 lots of 199. I will pop the links in the chat in a second. As it's challenge week, I do have 5 bonus spaces. 2 have gone already, which is amazing. For those of you that sign up, the next 3, you do get a one-to-one 60-minute session with me. We can use that as a real strategic session during the 6 weeks, or if you want to save it and do it as a bit more of a content creation session at the end. I did that with some of my programmers in the past. Feel free. I've also got a gorgeous little notepad bundle, and you will all get 1 month free trial of my membership, which helps you with the planning and the implementation stages. Everybody who signs up gets one of my content planners, a free download, and for everybody, this is obviously really important to me, you do get a 30-minute follow-up call, because I want to know that the strategy stuff that we've done is, you know, going from schooling to learning, is going in, it is working for you, and, you know, you're hopefully starting to see the outcome. You're starting to see the benefits filter through, certainly in your confidence, and even more so within your business.